Chino 2 is Japanese tank that is mostly known for capabilities of its cannon. There are more tanks using exactly the same gun, but out of all such vehicles, this one has the lowest battle rating, which makes its shell able to easily penetrate almost every opponent you can meet in battles. Additionally, such penetration can be achieved by APHE shells, and these, as you know, inflict a lot of damage. Especially if we talk about bigger projectiles, 75mm to be exact. All tanks using this cannon can use 3 types of ammunition. High explosive, if you are pacifist and you don't want to harm almost anyone, and 2 variants of armor-piercing high explosive rounds for those of you who have more aggressive views towards opponents. These 2 are not very different. One of them is a little bit more powerful since it has slightly more penetration and explosives. Normally you would need to research a better round, but since Chino 2 is a premium tank and all upgrades are already unlocked, you can start distributing one-shots with the best rounds straight away. But one-shotting opponents is not what makes this tank unusual. Soviet, German or USA tech trees all have tanks that can fire similar caliber APHE projectiles and deal similar damage. This tank is different from them because it can do one thing better. It fires those shells with noticeably bigger velocity, and since penetration of kinetic shell depends on its speed, you can enjoy significant penetration advantage as well. So significant that medium tank's armor don't need to be mentioned at all, except this mentioning that it doesn't need to be mentioned. While any heavy tank at similar battle ratings can be penetrated frontally, with Churchill being the most difficult. You have to aim at its machine gun, but since no one plays it, problem solved. The vast majority of heavy tanks you will fight are Soviet or American. Their armor does not exceed 100mm, which means if you don't aim at angled armor plates, your shells will be able to penetrate even heavy tanks more than a kilometer away. Additionally, high muzzle velocity makes ballistics easier. Bigger velocity also revealed interesting phenomena. While playing this tank, I noticed that for distant targets I had to use binoculars to see targets better because sniper mode offers very little zoom, making aiming at distant opponents quite difficult and watching this part of the video on your phone more painful. What's interesting is that Chino 2 has exactly the same zoom level, just like majority of tanks at similar battle ratings. The thing is, while playing majority of other tanks with less penetrating shells, your fire will not be so effective at bigger ranges. So either you will seek to close the distance first, or won't engage distant target at all to not give away your position. While with this tank, you will still have a reasonable amount of penetration even in a very unlikely scenario when the target is 2 kilometers away. Since nothing stops you from engaging distant targets, you will naturally do that more often. That creates an impression that this tank has almost no zoom, while in reality it's similar to other vehicles. There is only one downside limiting tank's firepower: reload time. With Aced Crew, it takes 7.7 seconds, which is not very bad and, what's important, shorter than crew replenishment, but if you compare it with the reload times of almost every your opponent, they will be able to shoot another round sooner unless you have advantage in crew skills. The tank is narrow, which allows you to drive through narrow gaps, but that's a questionable advantage because you won't be able to benefit from that very often anyway, and at the same time a narrowness brings a disadvantage, because crew members have hard time practicing social distancing, which, as we all should know by now, increases mortality. Usually even opponents with solid armor-piercing shells will be able to knock out few of your crew members at once. Even worse is that lower BR opponents with weak guns have no difficulties penetrating your armor in the first place. The only reliable protection you have is transmission, which sometimes can absorb a lot of damage. Otherwise, even SPAAs will pose danger, as the thickest frontal plates are only 50 mm, while the rest of armor around the tank is so thin that under right circumstances even high-cal machine guns can penetrate it. While 50 mm armor for this tank's BR might sound normal, other tanks usually have sloped armor or areas with thicker plates or at least add-on tracks, and Chinu 2 has none of these. So you might want to stay away from open areas and hide behind unpenetratable objects, or at least play hull down. That is possible thanks to 10 degrees guns depression, but it's still risky. A big part of a turret still sticks above the cannon, and there is tall commander's hatch, making the tank quite exposed even in hull down position. To survive, this tank must stay hidden just like you would with light tanks. Just in this case you don't have that much mobility. Chinu 2 can accelerate up to 39 kph, which is possible to reach even off-road. But that at the same time is the maximum speed, so don't expect to go any faster even when moving down. Reverse is 7 kph, enough to hide back behind cover, but only if that cover is right next to you. So overall, even with little amount of armor, mobility is just average. Additionally, while moving you won't be able to shoot back at attackers because of hull wobbling, which puts you in disadvantage against USA teams. Since in low tiers you meet a lot of opponents with little or no armor, I have to say a few words about the tank's secondary armament. At first I wanted to say, this machine gun is useless. But then I had a second thought and decided to say, these machine guns are useless, because there are two of them. Both of them have very small clips, so have to be reloaded every few seconds, and low caliber means they are not effective against anything that has any kind of armor. In arcade, there are both very good and bad things. Very good is that the tank has amazing penetration and damage, which are 2 out of 3 most important things for this game mode. Since in arcade tanks with only one crew member are not considered destroyed if crew replenishment is not used, damage is handy to destroy opponents immediately, while penetration allows you to shoot the silhouettes without worrying too much about opponents' armor thickness. Unfortunately, the third most important for arcade thing, armor, is not reliable to say the least. Taking cover behind unpenetratable objects becomes even more important in arcade environment, where the name tag will reveal your position to opponents. But as long as you have safe place to hide, firepower will easily compensate any survivability inconveniences. Despite the tank has little armor, which makes positioning mistakes more deadly, the tank felt suitable for new players. High penetration means that players don't have to know weak spots of other tanks in all nations, and post-penetration damage is big enough that it doesn't matter if opponent's crew or modules are located in unusual way inside the tank. I would rate it 7 very sticking out machine guns out of 10. Overall, it is a decent vehicle to quickly jump through first tiers of Japanese tech tree, which is exactly the reason why someone would need a relatively low rank premium tank. And this is the part where you put like because you like the video, where you subscribe to see more videos like this, and unsubscribe because all your YouTube feed is already filled with War Thunder videos.